समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
आप समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
The strategic unrest and violence in the Middle East is intensifying. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio will be heading to Qatar after meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, where he affirmed the most unprecedented support to Israel in the history of the United States. Meanwhile, the GCC and Islamic states have held an emergency summit in Doha, intoing what may be best described as oral condemnation of Israel's cowardly attack on Hamas leaders in Qatar. But they have made no concrete promises. UN, as usual, is sidelined and irrelevant. And to add another layer of strategic complexity, there is Russia. Anticipating the spillover of the conflict to Iraq, the last vestiges of Iranian proxies in the region, Shoigu has arrived in Baghdad. But what really can Russia do? It could neither save Assad nor help Iran against the 12-day war with Israel. Finally, what is the future of Netanyahu? And when will peace return to the region, if at all? To unpack these complex questions, I'm joined by none other than one of the finest American diplomats to the region, Patrick Nicholas Theros. Ambassador Theros served as the United States ambassador to Qatar from 1995 to 1998. Over the course of his distinguished diplomatic career, he has held multiple posts across Saudi Arabia, UAE, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, to name a few. In short, he has served all over the region. He speaks fluent Arabic as well. In recognition of his contributions to strengthening US-Qatar relations, he has been awarded with the Qatar Order of Merit in 1999. Additionally, he received 4 Superior Honor Awards, the Foreign Service's highest distinction for outstanding achievement. After his retirement from the Foreign Service, Ambassador Theros has become the president of the US-Qatar Business Council, and this position he held until 2017. He now serves as a strategic advisor to the Gulf International Forum, a policy think tank based in Washington, D.C. And today, he joins me from D.C. But before I take you to Ambassador Theros, I have to make an appeal. Consider becoming subscribers to ThePrint if you haven't already, because all this great journalism and content comes for a price. So what an honor to be joined by you, Ambassador Theros. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's a beautiful day. We've had a little bit of rain at night, none during the day, and the temperature is nice. So I have very few complaints about the day.
Okay, so it's so great to have you for the Worldview of Swasti. As you know, we've been trying to schedule this discussion for a while, and I'm so happy that we are finally doing it. So let's just start from the most obvious and the most recent development. What is Mr. Marco Rubio doing in the Middle East? What do you think the United States administration has in mind right now?
Some way of getting this thing to never happen again. And also some way to undo the damage that has been done to America's reputation, and more than that, to America's role as the perceived protector of the Gulf. This is America, just by way of history, America's relationship with the Gulf stems from a meeting after the Yalta Conference in 1945 in the Suez Canal between President Roosevelt and the then king, the founder of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, King Abdulaziz ibn Saud. And essentially, take all the other stuff out, Roosevelt told King Saud that you have our protection and we are dedicated to keeping the flow of oil from the region, and in order to do that, we will protect you. And through various public statements throughout the next 50 years, the United States reiterated that it was the protector of the Gulf. And the Gulf states, and particularly the small ones that are the periphery of the Gulf, see themselves as, yeah, they will fight, but they are too small, have too few resources other than oil, yes, to really put up a resistance against a well-equipped foreign power. They see most of the world outside them as potentially predatory, and the Gulf states' principal foreign policy objective since even before independence, when the British were still there, has been to find a foreign protector against predatory neighbors.
Right.
Iran,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
please.
yeah,
Yeah.
Iran, the before Saudi Arabia. So, and this has been the United States for the last 30, 40 years, 50 years, and all of a sudden, the U.S. has shown that it doesn't seem prepared to defend them.
Now, it's interesting because let me just stop you there. And you said that Marco Rubio is there to reassert America's role as the security, provider and guarantor. But having said that, what we are seeing is that contrary to United States' traditional role in the region, United States is now acting and behaving like a staunch Israeli ally and doesn't really seem to care for the security of other Gulf states, particularly Qatar. And we are discussing it in the
Yeah,
aftermath of the strikes on Qatar. Yeah.
this is a circle that needs squaring, and I don't believe that this visit will accomplish that. Matter of fact, I'm much more afraid that this visit will, in fact, further undermine America's reputation as the protector. Uh, uh, Everyone knows in the world, not just in the Gulf, that decisions are made by the president. Uh, he seems to be running American foreign policy single-handedly, with the occasional intervention of a couple of fellow real estate developers like Michael Witkoff, and so he has not spoken in a way that reassures the Gulf states, uh, and until he speaks, no matter what Rubio says in a private conversation with the emir or the prime minister, uh, will not be taken seriously.
Yeah, I understand that. So let's just start. I mean, you have served at all possible, important states in that particular region. You were a United States ambassador to Qatar. So let's first understand the role of Qatar. It has projected itself both as a host and as the mediator on the global stage, particularly in the Middle East. Now, not many people know that interestingly, it hosts the US base, it hosts the French base, it hosts the British base, as well as a Turkish base. And yet, it happens to be the only country which is struck by both Iran first and now Israel. Why do you think Qatar has not been able to protect itself?
The Iran attack is seen as performative.
Mhm.
Iran telegraphed, more than telegraphed, I'm quite sure that Iran passed through diplomatic channels exactly what missile was going to be fired where. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, they appear to have used older, slower missiles that were easy to shoot down. The Qatari air defense systems, they have Patriot, were silent. They were only engaged by the Americans. And to the best of what I've seen in reports, of the 18 missiles fired, 16 were shot down and 2 were ignored because they were wide of their target. So that attack is seen as performative. It
Mhm.
didn't bother the Qataris very much. It was a show,
Yeah.
just to
To
Iran
look for an
has
off
to do
ramp.
something.
To
Uh,
look for an off ramp also, because the 12-day war had to be brought to an end.
yeah, exactly. And so the regime in Tehran doesn't want a war with the United States. An attack on Qatar could well have triggered a war with a proper attack on Qatar, as opposed to shooting what are essentially fake missiles at El Udeid, the American base, would have almost certainly triggered open hostilities with the United States. Uh,
Right. So, what is the difference this time around when
this
Israel has struck? Yeah.
this time around, first of all, Netanyahu didn't tell Trump. Uh, I had this imaginary conversation between Netanyahu and Trump, in which Netanyahu says to Trump, I'm going to go after Hamas everywhere. And Trump, who rarely reads his briefing papers and who probably thinks that other people understand everything that he's going to say, said, yeah, sure, attaboy, go for him.
Yeah.
Not realizing that now anywhere includes Qatar. And Trump didn't say in my imaginary, but I think very likely conversation, he didn't say, well, you got to tell me the individual places you're going to hit, and you got to give me advance notice when you hit them.
Yeah.
I'm sure that question was not asked. And so Netanyahu goes home and says, you see, I've got his permission to hit anything I want.
Right. So, but it is interesting that even when Benjamin Netanyahu did not see the need to really apprise the United States administration, particularly Donald Trump, which is a very, very personality-driven administration this time around, as you mentioned, Marco Rubio is still there to affirm the most unprecedented support given to Israel by United States.
That, I must admit, left me speechless. I've seen, over the course of a career, the United States being a superpower, we occasionally do very dumb things. And that one left me absolutely speechless. I cannot imagine exactly how Marco Rubio thought that performance at the Wailing Wall, the appearances of "I'm with you all the way," will allow whatever message he has to deliver in Qatar to be credible. Beyond being speechless, I have no other commentary on that one.
I really appreciate you for your candid remarks there. And let's also understand the position of the other GCC states, because even though we saw that there was a whole party happening in Doha, everybody came together and they condemned the Israeli strikes. But I guess my reading was that it looked more like lip service. So why are they willing to do something about it?
And I think there's several reasons. The first one being that the real lip service came, in fact, from many of the Muslim countries that are beyond Israel's range to hit and have no particular part to play in the Middle East crisis. I mean, Malaysia, Indonesia, all the other Islamic states, I think morally they support Qatar on this. They feel that there's been an attack on an important Islamic state and a state and a rich one that has a further role to play in their economies. But there's a saying in English, they have no dog in this fight. They're simply not involved. So for them to take a strong position without having carefully thought out the consequences would have simply been out of character. And it would have been dangerous. You have to think through what rational states think through what their positions are. Inside the Gulf, you have, I think, two or three other issues. First of all, the differences between the Gulf states go back a long time. The dispute between Qatar and Abu Dhabi, now the United Arab Emirates, goes back to events in the 1860s. And they are essentially disputes between the ruling families. And it's very hard for them to get over it. I'm amazed at how, I suppose, I shouldn't be surprised after all these years, but it's really hard to get over it. I find the Saudis closer to the Qataris now than to the Emirati position. The other Gulf states are all trying to digest what happened. They don't take decisions quickly. Even if there was a understanding behind the scenes among the GCC states to do something about this, it will not roll out quickly. It will not be a break in relations. It will be the loss of contracts. It will be, I do expect that there will be much deeper engagement with Iran than has gone now. I think they will be less amenable to America demanding that they not buy a particular set of Chinese electronic kit. the willingness of some of the Gulf states to permit American military actions, certain American military actions, I think will go down, but we won't see it in a single dramatic moment. It's
Yeah, and I ask you this question because this is something that I've been noticing from India, of course. Ever since Israel started to go after all the proxies, the Iranian proxies, and
Mhm.
after basically the events that unfolded after 7th October attack, the 2023 attack, by Hamas on Israel. Now, after that, I mean, Israel has wiped out Hamas's top leadership almost. It's wiped out Hezbollah. It's wiped out, I mean, brought a lot of damage done to Houthis. Now I'm sure it is going to go after the Irani proxies in Iraq. And yet, this has been going on for a while. We saw a 12-day war unfold between Iran and Israel, which was quite direct. We saw the United States coming in with the B 2 bombers. And yet, so this is not the first time that in the aftermath of Israeli attacks or strikes on Qatar that everybody is quiet. All these states have been rather quiet. So I think the writing, to my mind, is pretty much on the wall. They will not do anything to get involved in any kind of military escalation. Is that the right reading?
Military escalation. You're absolutely correct. None of the Gulf states feel confident that their military can take on a military that is as powerful as that of Israel, particularly because the Israelis simply possess technology, American technology, I should add. They possess technology that makes it difficult for the Gulf states to defend themselves, most of which have overwhelming American technology in their defense systems, but do not have the degree of technical sophistication and experience in using them that the Israelis do. So,
Okay.
uh, and the Gulf states, I think, still have this latent belief that in an all-out military confrontation, Washington would have no choice but to come to their defense, because uh, if the Gulf states do have the ability to turn off the flow of oil and gas into the world, and even though the U.S. is an oil and gas exporter, it is still subject to the laws of supply and demand worldwide. So it
Yeah.
would be the the immediate inflation in gasoline prices at the pump in the United States would, in Trump's mind, be catastrophic to his political
Right.
agenda.
Right. But we have to now, at this stage, bring out the role of an external actor, which, of course, has a lot of role to play in the geopolitics of Middle East, but
Yeah.
off late has been really sucked into a war in its own theater, which is Russia. So just as we were discussing, all this, Shoigu has just reached Baghdad in Iraq. And he has affirmed that he is going to give defense cooperation and those kind of things and promises to Iraq. And I think my reading is that perhaps there is an anticipation that this is going to spill over. So
Mhm.
let's just talk about the role of Russia here. And I mention it because, contrary to everybody's expectation, Putin really couldn't do much to save Assad from falling, or, for example, help Iran, its close ally, against Israel in the 12-day war. What really is Shoigu promising here, and will it make any difference?
I think at the end, Shoigu is trying to sell hardware. He's trying to sell uh,
Okay.
Russian military equipment. That's at the top of his agenda,
Mhm.
because perhaps also he might be trying to get Iraq to cooperate a bit with the Russians on some of the more, say, export of certain things, or allow transit through Iraq north. Uh, a variety of small subjects in which he is trading the appearance of Russian support for
Mhm.
Iraq. But at the moment, I think the Russians are realists. They
Mhm.
are so deeply engaged uh, in,
Ukraine.
in Ukraine, in Eastern Europe, that it would be very difficult for them to do anything at all on this subject. Uh,
Okay. Yeah. No, please complete what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's essentially, let me see the best I can do. Again, performance is very important in diplomacy. Stage performances, the theater is very important in diplomacy, and I think Shoigu's visit there is that, and it's performance first, perhaps sell arms, perhaps be able to Iraq used to have a rather formidable capacity to build weapons, and it's entirely possible that he might be trying to get the Iraqis to do some of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know what, but Iraq, for example, has a huge quantity of leftover Warsaw Pact ammunition,
Yeah.
artillery ammunition, and perhaps Shoigu just wants to make sure that Iraq will not sell it to Ukraine.
Okay.
There's a whole bunch, but uh, I do I do not see a major policy move
Right.
by the Russians on this one.
So, my opinion on this, Ambassador Theros, is that perhaps Russia is also trying to somewhere compensate for the fact that during the 12-day war, when Iranian foreign minister went to Moscow to ask for help and Russia couldn't do it. So I think this is a proactive sort of a performance or a performative, like you said, to make sure that Russia has some skin in the game. Whether or not it can really move anything around is a different thing, but at least
Right.
in terms of tactics. Yeah. But let's now talk a little bit about Iran. Now, going by how things are, of course, this is not just about Israeli strikes on Qatar. Israel has nothing against Qatar directly right now.
Mhm.
Israel was targeting the Hamas leaders that were hiding in Qatar. Okay, Qatar was hosting
Mhm.
them. So Israel has said it clearly that they are going to go against all these proxies, no matter where they are. And now, after this chapter, perhaps the next chapter, like I mentioned, would be the Iranian proxies that are in Iraq. Now, in that situation, when you see Iran getting sort of pushed to the corner, do you think there is a possibility for them to react by closing the Strait of Hormuz?
No, it's not in their interest. Their
Okay.
own economy is tied up in keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. In the
Hmm.
past, and as a tactical matter, I mean, they could make some noises that might raise insurance rates for going through the straits, but they won't close it.
Hmm.
I can't imagine a single set of circumstances
Okay.
absent a major military operation against Iran that would cause them to close the straits. And as a matter of fact, uh, the real Iranian nuclear option was a
Yeah.
threat that goes back several years that if they are attacked by the United States, uh, the Israel part was not quite clear at the time. If they are attacked by the United States, their asymmetrical response would be to destroy the export facilities of the countries across the Gulf, uh,
Okay.
which would be the functional equivalent of closing the Straits of Hormuz for 2 or 3 years while they rebuilt them. Uh,
Okay. And how are the Iranians going to do that? I mean, do you have a scenario in your mind when you talk about?
if there was a major attack on Iran that was not only regime threatening but country threatening, I mean,
Mhm.
if it was a kind of attack in which the American attack went against not only the Iranian military and the Iranian leadership, but started
Mhm.
attacking Iran's ability to export, started attacking Iran's infrastructure, where they
Mhm.
saw this as an American plot to undermine sort of the stability of Iran and
Right.
as well as get rid of the regime. If it reached that, then I think they would go after they would close down the Gulf rather than close the Straits of Hormuz.
Right. So that is a more likely scenario in your opinion.
Yeah.
And that also brings me now to this question of where is Turkey in all this? Because Turkey, while it competes with Saudi Arabia for the leadership of the Muslim world, Turkey also has problems with Israel, although they
Yes.
somewhere also cooperate with Israel. And then Turkey has its problems with Iran. And Turkey is a NATO member and has problems with the US. I mean, Turkey is a very difficult actor here to understand. What is Turkey's role and how is that going to be affected by what is happening?
Again, we have reverted to a world of personalities, just as Trump makes all the decisions in the United States, Putin in Russia, and Netanyahu is driving this madness because of his own political needs. Uh,
Yeah.
Erdogan calls the shots in Turkey.
Yeah.
Erdogan has managed to make Israel the most hated country among the Turkish population. I mean, Israel helps with what it's doing in Gaza and so forth, but it benefits Erdogan to have this, how can I say, verbal squabble
Okay.
with Israel that is now elevated to a restrictions on trade and overflights and stuff like that. None of which are very threatening to Israel. They do a little bit of damage and a little bit of an annoyance. But Erdogan needs an outside enemy. He has in the past made Greece his outside enemy, and he continues to do that, but not with the same degree of enthusiasm that he's applying to Israel. A Turkish academic here in Washington told me that Erdogan has finally managed to accomplish. The Greeks should be happy. Greece is the second most hated country in Turkey now. Israel comes first. So that level of hatred benefits Erdogan.
But then, with all this that is happening, you see that the comprehensive power of Israel seems to be on the rise, with Netanyahu literally having Trump in his pocket. So, how is this really helping Turkey in any way?
Because Erdogan thinks he has Trump in his pocket. Trump has managed, I think, Trump has managed to put himself in a real bind here. He admires Erdogan publicly. He has gone. He has promised Erdogan that he's going to find a way around the opposition, the unified opposition of the entire U.S. military, to selling F-35 fighters to Turkey. There is just issue after issue in which Trump has made promises he can't keep very well, but they are the kind of promises that make Erdogan look like Trump is in his pocket. And I think actually, in terms of affection, if politicians have such a word in their vocabulary, in terms of affection, I think Trump likes Erdogan more than he likes Netanyahu. It's just Netanyahu agitates more of Trump's base than anyone else. So Turkey presents two problems for, let's say, the Israelis go after Hamas people living in Turkey. Actually, three problems. The first one is the targets are not quite as politically productive. It's their families. So if they go in and they kill the wife and children of Haniya or something like that, they really haven't accomplished much, except make Erdogan look even more popular. If they try a serious strike against Turkey, Turkey is going to shout Article 5, and it is really difficult for the rest of NATO not to back him up at that point. Here we are. NATO is concerned that the Americans may not respect Article 5, and Trump would love to have an opportunity to say, well, you didn't respect Article 5 for Turkey, and concealing the fact that he probably might or might not either. I don't know. But Netanyahu, I think Netanyahu is already behaving somewhat irrationally. This is the irrationality driven by political desperation. And so he has to be pretty irrational to attack Turkey. Where there is a greater problem of, I think, a clash, but it's not at the same level, is in Syria. Israel appears determined to prevent Syria from stabilizing.
Of course. They are using Jews and they are using all those populations to control.
And it is in Turkey's interest to have a stable Syria, particularly a stable Syria that they helped recreate. So the possibility of a clash, and I can't tell you exactly where, the possibility of a clash in Syria or over Syria is far more likely than a direct Israeli attack on Turkey. Let me footnote this with asterisk it with all this assumes rationality, and we are seeing less and less rationality.
Yes, I know. I totally agree with you on that part. But, there's also another actor, which is like closer home for us, that has been sort of coming out with quite heavy duty statements on this matter, and that is Pakistan. And Pakistan has openly said that they are willing to side with Qatar, and they are open to all military solutions and actions against Israel. Of course, I mean, we all know that Pakistan could say anything that it wants. It may not, it's been punching above its weight for all these years, but
for centuries.
Okay, let's centuries.
A decade. Well, end of the last century.
But but the region so well, and then when you see, and I ask this question in the context of this, this at least this optics of a rapprochement between President Trump and Asim Munir, and whatever has been happening between India and Pakistan, and the role of the US, out there. And when you see that Pakistan is now trying to play an active role, should India be concerned about potential Pakistani involvement in that region? And if so, how?
Uh, Let me first say that I think President Trump has a problem. He is trying to run America's foreign policy from the desk in the Oval Office by himself, interfering. And I think he has a very serious cognitive problem, and not that he's senile or anything like that. He has difficulty connecting the dots.
Okay.
He sees his friendliness with Pakistan right now as a way of pressuring India,
Yeah.
who he has chosen to make another. I forgive me for shooting himself for the foot on this, but I think he sees Pakistan as a way to pressure India. So he supports Pakistan against India. I don't think he actually makes the connection
Okay.
that Pakistan has other interests in the world. That every country has other interests in the world, and he goes and he thinks that his interests are the only ones that count. So,
Yeah.
from Trump's point of view, from Trump's point of view, this has nothing to do with the Middle East. Pakistan. He looks at a map. Iran's in between, Pakistan a little very far away. So nothing. It has nothing to do with the Middle East, I think, in his mind.
Okay.
And he just simply doesn't understand. However, the Gulf states, even though they have a long relationship with Pakistan, they have similarly an even longer relationship with India, and in many ways, a very deep relationship with India. That is, I digress for a moment. I'm surprised that India has failed to exploit through the years. That relationship. But
Thank you for making that point. Yes, I mean, this is something that we've been sort of now wondering over, as that why is it that India has not been able to capitalize, on that leverage that it held. Anyway, coming back to Pakistan.
come back to Pakistan. There are only two places where Pakistan can realistically support the Gulf states. One would be if an Israeli attack on the Gulf states precipitates war with Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan can offer to send ground troops. Or Pakistan can wave the nuclear saber and can say, if Israel uses nuclear weapons against any of the Gulf states, and
Pakistan also has nuclear weapons, right? So the classic saber killing. Yeah,
right.
all right. Okay.
But beyond that, I don't think the Gulf states would like. Pakistan otherwise has very little to offer. They don't have the same advanced weapon. They have old weapons that the Gulf states used to use, but they don't have any. Pakistan's advanced arsenal today is largely Chinese.
Right. Of course.
And the Gulf states don't own anything Chinese that I know of. So from that point of view, providing trained personnel, for example, one of the most important services that Pakistan has provided in the past for the Gulf states has been providing trained personnel for the armed forces of the Gulf states. I remember
Qatar, especially Qatar. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And even in the past, I remember, because I first went to the Gulf in 1964, it's an odd thing, the Gulf was still, in the lower Gulf was still under British, under the remnants of the Raj, that was left of it. And most of the people who'd served the British in the Gulf at the time were former Office of India people. This was after the FCOK was created. And I remember that virtually every Gulf state that I visited, because I was the consular officer for the entire Gulf, which is an odd job, virtually every Gulf state that I visited had 2 to 3 senior Pakistanis serving in the deputy or even the command position of every army in the Gulf at that time. So now what has happened, they have less to offer. You still see Pakistanis there, but now they are mostly in the cannon fodder category.
Okay. All right. And no, I mean, thanks for that elaboration because, of course, this is something that directly concerns us. Now, since we've been mentioning so much about Donald Trump's way of, doing geopolitics, and you told me that he has this incapacity to really connect the dots. So you gave
Correct.
me so many examples on that. Now, how do you see this scenario where Trump's unusual closeness to Israel and to Netanyahu, particularly, I mean, whatever Netanyahu is doing, and deep involvement in the region, could be coming at the cost of making his MAGA fan base a little uncomfortable because they would want him to look at America first. And here is a president that is getting involved, that is sending diplomatic support, sending the B 2 bombers, doing whatever it takes. So I see a discrepancy, but what are your views on that?
Yeah. Uh, his problem is that his fan base does not have a unified view of the world. There is a there's a recommended very interesting article last week in the Washington Post about the 5 or 6 tribes that make up MAGA.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
in one point is the evangelical Christians.
Hmm.
They are perhaps the most fanatic supporters of President Trump, and they are the most fanatic supporters of Israel.
Okay.
And so comparing them in numbers, I would say the evangelical base is quite large, and it just loves everything that Trump does in support of Israel. So he cannot afford to alienate them. The He believes he's got a way of dealing with the isolationist part of his base. And that is by insofar, I detect, I should say, a policy that the United States will remain involved in the world, but it won't be by sending troops anywhere. We will simply use our air power to go strike at people we don't like. We just bombed 2 cabin cruisers in the Caribbean, allegedly because there were drug smugglers on them.
Yeah.
I think you will. So he thinks he's squaring the circle here with his isolationist base and his religious base, because he's not getting involved. He sent the B 2 bombers. They dropped some bombs.
Yeah.
They may or may not have done a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And then he told the Israelis to stop bombing. I've done it for you. And
Yeah.
for him, that is a success. That is a considerable success. And he can turn to his isolationist base and say, see, we're not involved. I mean, there are no American troops here.
Okay.
The other base that I think he is having a problem with, or will have a problem with, is the degree of American financial support for Israel. I have just read an article which it looks to be true,
Yeah.
is that as of the beginning of summer, the United States had paid for 70% of Israel's costs
Yeah.
in the war. And that part of the base is looking for places to cut so they can justify a tax cut for billionaires. And
All
they've
right.
run out of places to cut.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
they're now down to the $5 to $10 billion programs. Well, that's the size of well, it's now 17 billion, but that's the size of the program that we are running with Israel. So that part of his base is opposed to it. And then
Okay.
there are a few who are part of his evangelical base, but are caught up in Israel's slaughter of children in Gaza. But they still represent a relatively small part of his base, and one that has backed him on every other subject. They're trying to separate Trump. When Marjorie Taylor Greene says something, she tends to go after unknown politicians who support the slaughter of children and wants to end aid to Israel. But she has pretty much avoided attacking Trump personally.
All
So
right. Oh, yeah. No, very interesting. So I mean, your final thoughts on how do you foresee the events unfolding from here? I mean, what are your concluding remarks on what's happening?
To me, there are two scenarios. The first scenario is that Trump, for reasons uh, that he sees as being to his advantage, tells Israel to stop.
Okay.
Yeah, that is one scenario. The other scenario will be a continuous, increasingly more horrific loss of life in Gaza, and perhaps the extension of war by Netanyahu to Syria, perhaps to Iraq. I have some doubts about Iraq, but perhaps to
Okay.
Iraq and to Yemen, just because he needs to keep the war going. His political survival and perhaps his staying out of jail depend on keeping the war going, and he will
Yeah.
do anything in his power to stay out of jail. So
Okay.
the easiest part of this is to continue the war, to continue the slaughter in Gaza, and to encourage his settler friends, who are the 11, if I remember correctly, total of 11 votes, 11 members of the Knesset, who keep him in power.
Yeah.
And as long as he can keep them happy, perhaps by taking moves towards the annexation of parts of the West Bank, perhaps by moving the violence to the military violence to the West Bank, by any means, uh, I just see that as the more likely uh, future. And it pains me to say so because it just means the killing of more people in a
Yeah.
senseless war that has no rational end.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we are all very concerned about what is happening in that region and the return of hostilities, and nobody really knows when peace would return, if at all, in
Yeah.
that region. But on that note, I have to thank you, Ambassador Theros, for taking the time out and speaking to me today morning directly from Washington, D.C. So that was Ambassador Patrick Theros, former ambassador of the United States to Qatar, and you were watching him on Worldview with Swasti. Stay tuned for yet another episode.